Um, Hello everyone. Emilia, Queen Llama here. I almost messed that up. Welcome to the Themysciran Agenda. This is a monthly talk show dedicated to all things Wonder Woman. And tonight's episode is about Wonder Woman, Eyes of the Gorgon. Before we jump in, I just wanted to go over the episode format. And of course, I'm always open to suggestions post-show. So, you know, of course, we're discussing Eyes of the Gorgon because I've said it 8 million times. It's by Greg Rucka with art by Drew Johnson, James Rice, and Sean Phillips, Ray Snyder, and covers by J.G. Jones, who I've actually had signed my copy of Hikatea. He did the cover for that one, which is the one where Wonder Woman stepping on Batman's head. Classic. I will discuss the plot, a general review, all the Greek mythology references, because I feel like they play a big role in this story, and the significance to the Wonder Woman lore, and just my general criticisms and opinions. And I actually do have a small criticism, believe it or not. Again, I'm only focusing on Wonder Woman and Eyes of the Gorgon specifically, and then some of the comics that kind of lead up and follow afterwards, because it all ties in really well. And you know, I always, with these episodes and with these reviews, I want to focus on how it holds up as a Wonder Woman book amongst other Wonder Woman books, rather than amongst other comic books, even though I think Wonder Woman Eyes of the Gorgon is up there with like some of the best Batman and Superman stories. So yeah, before we jump into the summary, any questions? Has anyone ever read Eyes of the Gorgon? Is anyone in the process of reading it right now? Because if so, there's definitely going to be spoilers. So just fair warning, I am going over the plot and the summary of the plot. So that's just a warning. If my excitement is already compelling you to read the story, go read it now. And then you can come back and watch this, so that way you don't get spoiled. But yeah, I think we are ready to jump in. Let's do it. So Eyes of the Gorgon is as Gorgon entails, is a fight between Wonder Woman and Medusa. It answers the core question of the story: is how much is a single life worth? It follows Wonder Woman as she faces her most dangerous adversary yet, Medusa. And actually, this book is super snobby in its Greek mythology, because a big part of the story is like, oh no, everyone spells and pronounces my name wrong. Like, there's a correct pronunciation and etymology to Medusa that they include in this. So I thought that was always really funny. It's like, actually, there's a O in my name kind of situation. So that's when you know Rucka knows a lot about Greek mythology, and it always makes me laugh. When the Gorgon takes the life of innocent Martin Garibaldi, a child, Wonder Woman is more than ready to answer the right of Ares and seek justice. So, and as a result, Diana is forced to pay a heavy price. Eyes of the Gorgon begins with the resurrection of Medusa and ends with the dethroning of Zeus. So a lot happens in this book. It starts like this. Ares convinces Eros, the Cupid, to use his powers to make Zeus fall for Artemis, the Amazon. Hera, in a jealous rage, kicks Themyscira, causing destruction on the island. The Eyes of the Gorgon trade that I have doesn't include those first few chapters, but the new reprinting of the story does, and it kind of provides a little more context that you don't necessarily get when you just read the copy that I have. So Themyscira, but when Hera kicks Themyscira, she's kicking an image of Themyscira in a pool that all the gods kind of look over, because again, the pantheon protects Themyscira, and essentially it causes destruction across the island. In the process, Stheno, who is Medusa's sister, escapes captivity and saves Circe from drowning. So they both escape. Reunited, Uriel, Stheno demand Circe bring back Medusa. Circe, of course, being the coy bitch that she is, only resurrects Medusa's head. It's like, oh yeah, no, that's what you wanted. You wanted me to resurrect her, and I resurrected what you have. And then Poseidon appears and basically implores Circe to use her full magic to bring Medusa back, because Medusa is Poseidon's lover, and they have both faced loss, and this is the best way to get revenge against Athena and Wonder Woman. So then Circe brings back Medusa, and Medusa basically goes on a quest to seek revenge against Athena and thus Wonder Woman. Circe brings Medusa to Veronica Cale because they all share the same goals. It's like, you want to kill Wonder Woman? I want to kill Wonder Woman. Let's help each other out. And mostly because Veronica has a lot of connections in US politics, which actually plays a big role in Rika's Wonder Woman run. So Veronica is kind of given no choice and helps Medusa basically find Wonder Woman and find a way to kill her. Diana is also at this time the ambassador, Themysciran's ambassador to the United States, because essentially Themyscira has appeared off the coast of the Carolinas, and there's a lot of political tension between the two countries because Themyscira is remaining neutral. So at this time, the president invites Diana to a party to kind of see if there's a chance to discuss relations between the two countries. Really, it's the US demanding that Themyscira gives up its technology, as the US does. So, and at this part, Medusa attacks Diana at a party. A fight ensues. Medusa escapes. But then Medusa goes to the Themysciran embassy in the United States, finds her way inside, and begins attacking the inhabitants of the embassy. Diana arrives just in the nick of time. However, she is too late to stop one of the little boys, Martin, who was living at the embassy with his family, from looking in Medusa's eyes, and as a result, he turns to stone. At that point, the story takes like a total turn. She, in Wonder Woman's like rage and anger, she almost kills Medusa, but Medusa invokes Ares, and basically Diana has to agree to a battle with Medusa, and if she refuses, she dies. So it's like, you either face me in combat and win, or you perish. Insert Obama meme right there. So the two battle, and in probably the most intense Wonder Woman scenes ever, Diana at the end of her ropes, she's about to lose. She takes one of the decapitated snake heads and pours the venom over her eyes, permanently blinding herself, and thus being uninfected by Medusa's gaze. And I actually want to show you guys how cool these panels are, because it's really cool. So I'm gonna pull those up. So yeah, so this is the part, and on top of all this battle is happening, the whole world is watching. It's essentially being broadcast everywhere in the world. And so, you know, everyone's just watching and like rooting for her. And then in like a final motion, she beheads Medusa, and it's just like clean cut. She's blind, she wins. And and the thing is, that's not where the story ends. Like the story isn't over when you know, the story doesn't end when Diana wins, because she doesn't actually win. So from there, like, the story continues, and it's revealed kind of through the sides and like everything going on, that Athena has kind of planned all of this so she can gain the throne from Zeus. She basically, right after, like, Diana doesn't even have time to recover. She's called to battle, called to represent Athena against Briareos, who is this giant 100-arm, 100-head monster that that's basically Zeus's personal bodyguard. And just when it looks like Wonder Woman's gonna lose, Athena, like, with her 200 IQ, throws like a sack with Medusa's heads in it, and Medusa Diana uses Medusa's head to basically turn this giant creature to stone. And as a result, Athena ascends to the throne because she wins the champion. She wins. And that is the entirety of the story. And my brief overview of it doesn't really capture just how intense it is from start to finish, and from the climactic battle between Diana and Medusa. But it's a very meaty story for as short as comics seem sometimes. It's very much worth it. I will take. So yeah, that is the summary of the plot to Eyes of the Gorgon. You know, it's more than just Medusa and Diana fighting. It's about these characters and these actors kind of pulling the strings behind Diana and her inability to really fight against these larger forces, and how she deals with that. But yeah, before I move on to kind of my general review, which is kind of what I was getting into, does anyone have any questions about the plot? Or if you've already read it, do you have a favorite part of Eyes of the Gorgon that you just love? Oh. If not, then I'll continue. And again, if I'm kind of just rambling, because I am really excited about this story, so I can understand if it might seem like I'm talking super fast, I'm more than happy to dial it back down. So as you can tell from how much I enjoy this story, you know, out of every Wonder Woman story I've read so far, this is the one that I've read the most. I've read it close to 10 times. I have certain arcs that are significant to me in personal ways, but Eyes of the Gorgon is just a damn good story. I'm not gonna kind of keep repeating myself. This is gonna be a pretty short general review, but this book is a Greek tragedy. It's not a triumphant moment from Diana in any way, and that is why I keep coming back to it, and that to me is why it's so compelling and worth a read. You have probably the most realistic depiction of the gods. You know, they're conniving and fickle, and you feel the struggle that Diana goes through to understand why why this has to happen. Why is she being used this way? Because ultimately she is at the Pantheon's mercy as Athena's champion. To what goal does fighting Medusa serve? Really, what benefit does any Greek hero ever have from helping the gods? All these kind of questions are asked and not necessarily answered, but shown in Diana's story. Odysseus was lost at sea for 10 years, and for Diana, she couldn't save the life of a little boy. And it's these hero struggles and their continuing drive to succeed and to push forward through it all is what makes it so interesting. That to me is why this story is so compelling, why I love it so much. It has the build up to a battle, it has the climactic battle, and it has the forlorn conclusion. The battle between Diana and Medusa is executed really well. The combat between them is drawn really well, as you saw from those panels. And it just shows this back and forth fight to the death between these two characters. The care taken in the portrayal of all the Greek characters solidifies them in the mythos of Wonder Woman as a whole. And in a way, it gives the comic a lore expanding beyond the series itself. Because Medusa exists, so does Perseus exist. There's this implied timeline, and Diana's story exists among the stories of Greek heroes. And I think because of this, I keep returning to the story. I like believing that Diana exists among the tomes of history. It's why I like the Wonder Woman movie, because Diana exists in World War I. She exists in our history. And I always think that's very compelling and makes these heroes more believable. Really, Eyes of the Gorgon has everything I love about Greek mythology. I mean, it has Medusa. It has Athena being a bitch. It has Zeus getting owned. And there's no happy ending. Like, to me, that is perfect for a Greek tragedy, for a Greek story that I really love. And again, it has Medusa. And I absolutely love that Medusa is kind of shown as like a main villain in a way, not just like a monster or an imitation that Diana fights. So that's really why this is such a successful story, and and why I really wanted to talk about it. But really, I wanted to focus on like the complexities. Yeah, good old hot Medusa, indeed, the hottest of the hot. So, unlike other Wonder Woman stories, I feel like I can really talk about the Greek mythology influences, because it's because of these mythological stories that exist that they're able to tell Eyes of the Gorgon. But before I jump into those influences, does anyone have any questions about the plot, about my general review, about the story, anything? If anyone doesn't have questions, that's fine. I will keep trucking along. So, of course, very obviously from the Greek mythology, you have the story of Medusa. Most are familiar with Ovid's account of Perseus' quest to slay Medusa, and the fact that Medusa is turned into a monster by Athena after she was, and warning here, we're going to talk about, how Medusa was raped by Poseidon, and that plays a part in Ovid's account of Perseus' fight against the Gorgon. Perseus is challenged to fight the Gorgon using his gifts from the gods to defeat her. Eyes of the Gorgon specifically draws upon the accounts from Apollodorus, who is a famous Greek scholar, Hesiod, who's the father of Greek poetry, Ovid, the Roman poet, and then Pindar, who was another Greek poet. And I have links to kind of where I found all this information, because I did kind of research a little more into which versions of Medusa kind of played into the overall story. Hesiod was one of the first to depict 3 Gorgon sisters, which were Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa. All 3 were children of Fulcrus and Ceto, and Medusa is the only mortal Gorgon. Ovid later depicted Medusa as the only Gorgon with snake hair. Apollodorus and Pindar both begin the tale of Perseus being challenged to kill Medusa. And in all of these versions, Medusa is, again, a mortal Gorgon. Bringing it back to Eyes of the Gorgon, through little snippets and things that Medusa's sister says, Medusa herself says, you can kind of see where all these influences kind of intersect. Apollodorus' version has Medusa as the lover of Poseidon, and from her corpse, the black blood Pegasus springs forth, is born. So Pegasus isn't like a breed of horse, it's a specific horse. Ovid was really the one who included the rape and transformation into a monster. For the most part, either the Gorgons were just scary and monsters to begin with, or they were just beautifully scary women. In Eyes of the Gorgon, Medusa was slain by Perseus, and her lover is Poseidon. And she blames Athena for sending Perseus to kill her, and Poseidon desires to have Medusa return to him. When Diana kills Medusa, Pegasus springs forth from the Gorgon's blood. Specifically in the mythology account, it springs from her head, which could mean a lot of different things. If you interpret that literally, it's like springing from the head, but most likely it means from like the body of the Gorgon. So again, by pulling from these different accounts, Ruka is able to create these motivations for Medusa, and for the pantheon. And even better, it gives the story a history. Medusa existed once and died and was brought back. And as a result, you can imply that all these other stories about Greek heroes and Greek monsters and Greek villains all happen at one point and exist in Wonder Woman's universe. So yeah, that's everything. That's just like there's a lot more to the story of Medusa, but for the sake of this Wonder Woman story, this is kind of what they're pulling from and what they're trying to tell. Another big thing that to me is like a lesser known, or maybe something that someone doesn't know outright, is the hecaton. I practiced this and then I forgot it. That's how it goes. They're called hecaton cherries. No, that's not how you say it. I'm an idiot. So let's try this again. Basically, the creature that Brarios is called the 100-handed ones, and I had practiced the official name, but it is very hard to say, so I do apologize for that. But anyway, the 100-handed ones are 3 giants that aided the pantheon in the battle against the Titans. Basically, they're responsible for throwing 100 rocks and 100 stones against the Titans to defeat them. They become the guards of Tartarus after the Battle of the Titans. Brarios is Zeus's personal guard in the Wonder Woman comics, and is basically the sole reason that Zeus can hold on to his power for so long, because no one can defeat this creature. So that was actually something I didn't even know about until I had like read Eyes of the Gorgon, and then like I was like, well, what are these things? And then looked them up, and they're literally like these giant monsters with 100 arms and like, and just a bunch of different arms. They're really weird in the comics and just in general. And finally, this is kind of more common, but Pallas Athena and the whole prophecy with Athena basically plays out in this in Eyes of the Gorgon. You know, and of course, it's not a true Greek story without a bit of prophecy, right? It was prophesied that Zeus's child would overthrow him, so he ate Metis, who was Athena's mother, and from his skull birthed Athena. And Zeus actually references this as like, my own that was born from my skull. Well, Athena didn't commit full patricide. The prophecy did ring true. She overthrew her father and assumed the throne. And actually, side note, Pallas is something that it's reference to who Athena is, but like there's kind of different stories behind that. Like in one instance, Pallas was a friend of Athena's who died tragically, and so Athena assumes the name Pallas in their honor. And other times, Pallas was a giant that Athena defeated in combat, and so she assumed its name. So that's when you know someone knows too much about Greek mythology, when they're including things like Pallas Athena instead of just saying Athena. And that's it's like little details like that is why I like the story so much. So those were really like the three big things as far as Greek mythology influences go. You know, you have Athena's prophecy and the story of Medusa, and all of these play a part in building this bigger story of Medusa versus Wonder Woman. So, but you know, now that we understand the mythology influence, like how does it play out in Wonder Woman in general and the lore of the comics? And really, I would argue that Eyes of the Gorgon had a huge impact on comics coming after it, especially within Rucka's run of Wonder Woman. And of course, when he departed the character, a lot of what he introduced got retconned, which is unfortunate, but as is common with a lot of DC comics, there's a lot of bad blood eventually between editors and writers. It's very common, and I don't know if a lot of it has to do with, you know, sidebar, like the fact that it's freelance work, and that ultimately, you know, you can create something really great, but it might not necessarily have significance for the next freelancer. So I always wondered if there was a lot more, if comic book writers had benefits and like better contracts, if that would change this relationship between editors and writers, or maybe between editors and the publisher. So, but I couldn't really say yes or no or answer properly those kind of questions. So, Wonder Woman loses her sight, and it's a permanent part of the Wonder Woman comics and other comics while Rucka is on the book. Her battle, you know, with Medusa had actual consequences to the full story that's being told after the book ends. You know, Veronica Cale and Cersei, like, really right at the end, band together and have a plot to destroy Wonder Woman again. Like, there's this continuation, and it really just shows that Eyes of the Gorgon was this, you know, Empire Strikes Back kind of story between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. And I know there's better, you know, examples of dark middle stories, but that is essentially what it is. You know, story-wise, Eyes of the Gorgon is an excellent middle arc in this larger saga being told. Rucka established some of the best characterization for Wonder Woman, and I feel most people who have even a brief like a very basic understanding of Wonder Woman know her because of the way Ruka was able to write her and show her. You know, Diana is this warrior diplomat, unafraid to make the necessary decisions. You know, she's this methodical fighter with no equal. And for the most part, the idea of her having no equal and being a tier above everyone else remained a standard even as DC shifted its focus from, you know, this more violent, naive version of Wonder Woman. You know, she's the best fighter. Cass Kane is the best fighter, but like she's just like the best for a reason. You know, she's Wonder Woman, she's the Trinity, she really doesn't have any equal when it comes to combat and to being, you know, this emissary of peace and stuff like that. So yeah. And also I feel like Gail Simone did a really good follow-up from Ruka's work, focusing on Diana's complicated relationship with the Pantheon. And, you know, Wonder Woman is always aware of the fickle nature of her own gods, but it doesn't stop her from believing. Or in Simone's Wonder Woman run, like, what happens when the gods are gone or she loses faith in them? And so those kind of elements that are brought up in Eyes of the Gorgon and continuing very much, I feel, had an impact on the way following writers wrote. But yeah, it's always hard to kind of assess how significant a story is when there's so many different writers coming in and out and bringing their own takes on the characters in. So I feel like a lot of writers feel inspired and influenced by Ruka's writing and by George Perez's writing. You know, when you think of Wonder Woman, these are the writers you think of. So really, even if Diana doesn't remain blind forever, you know, she gains her sight back, is those kind of like explorations of the character that I think really stick in the long run. So yeah. So it's kind of the lore significance and the mythology significance. Does anyone have any questions? I know I'm always asking for questions, but you know, like if there's something that just doesn't make sense or something that's been burning, like the burning questions you gotta ask, feel free to ask them and I will answer them to the best of my abilities. But yeah. Also, lore significance wise, one thing, Wonder Woman confirmed canon that Medusa is hot. So, you know, that will never change. That is part of the canon of Wonder Woman now. And we just gotta accept it. I'm just saying that we have to accept these canon parts of Wonder Woman. It's just we have to accept it. So so, you know, we're gonna kind of move into the closing thoughts. I don't have a lot of criticisms. I really do love the story so much, and I don't see a lot wrong with it. And that's probably because I look at Wonder Woman comics with like rose-tinted glasses all the time, and I just have like these favorite stories that it's hard for me. Sometimes it's hard to think objectively, but you know, it is a book that you can read without having to know what happened previously. It's enhanced by reading Ruka's stuff from start to finish, of course, because it, you know, this exists in the larger story that he is telling. But I think it's very successful on its own. You know, unlike when I did War of the Gods, where it just felt disconjointed and you didn't really understand what was going on. It's a pretty clear story, and there's not a lot of room for like for missing things and for not understanding something, because everything is explained, is hinted at, and you are able to draw the pieces together. It doesn't hold your hand necessarily, but like it expects you to know some things, but it's not going to leave you in the dark. For me, the biggest criticism is just going to be the depiction of Medusa as this vengeful and psychotic lover to Poseidon. It's an accurate depiction of the character according to the mythology that we understand, but just reading the story without having to read any of the issues beforehand, Medusa's motivations feel almost undefined at times. It's easy to understand her hatred of Athena, but her decision to go after Diana feels less clear. She's motivated for revenge for the sake of revenge. And maybe that's what Rika wanted to show, or kind of like the moral of the story is that, like, revenge for the sake of revenge doesn't benefit anyone in the end. The whole eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind, or, in this case, makes Wonder Woman go blind. It just feels like a cop out, not necessarily a cop out. It feels easy to just be like, oh, well, she's this psychotic lover and just wants revenge because of everything bad that's happened to her. And I feel like, personally, I feel like it's time to start writing a different kind of Medusa. I don't think you could retell Eyes of the Gorgon without Medusa's desire for revenge. But I think we're at a place where we can start imagining Medusa outside of her relationships with men, with Perseus, with like being killed. And maybe that's something to tell in a different story. For what it's worth, what is presented and what Medusa is in Eyes of the Gorgon fits. But there's room for improvement in how we show, love and violence against women and other things. So we're ready for a more complex version of Medusa that isn't just a crazy monster needs to be killed. So really, that's my only big criticism is, the motivations for the villain isn't 100% clear. But also, you realize that she's not the main antagonist in all this. Really, the antagonist in all this is Athena, because she is pulling the strings and using Diana, and really that makes her awful. And that's how Athena should always be. It's like this wise person on the surface, but really she's preparing to stab you in the back. And I think that's really the compelling part after Diana moves on from her battle with Medusa. Yeah, that's pretty much all my only issue with the book, which seems bad. It seems like I didn't even, well, you don't really care. It's just that you just really like the story. Ruka's Wonder Woman stories are always about breaking down Wonder Woman to the core of her character while showing how readers and the characters themselves don't fully understand the depths of Diana's convictions. It's hard for us to understand a character that would continue to sacrifice herself if it means she could save one person, or if it means she can find out the truth. Eyes of the Gorgon is that story showing just how far Wonder Woman is going to go for us, for that one person, and shows, like, even though she knows she's being manipulated, she's still gonna die by the sword. Essentially, she's still gonna fall upon the sword, because it's the right thing to do. She's not afraid to cross the edge to seek justice, because oftentimes the methods with which her other heroes seek justice isn't enough. Or it doesn't really go far enough sometimes. It doesn't mean she's cruel or that she's unhinged. It just means she understands a different concept of justice than we understand it. Next step, exactly, killing Maxwell Lord. Everyone else is like, that was wrong, you were wrong. She's like, no, it was the only option we had, and I had to take it. If it wasn't me, this and these bad things were gonna happen. And that kind of goes into my next point. Time and time again, we see superheroes pushed to their limits and forced to make hard decisions. But with Wonder Woman, oftentimes those decisions aren't very hard. You know, writers like to walk back Batman having to kill someone, or Superman having to take that step to being, you know, for people to fear him. You know, he steps back and he's like, he figures out a way around it, figures out a way to solve the problem without compromising his morals. Or like, superheroes don't have to compromise what they stand for to achieve their goal. But the way Wonder Woman also often approaches problems is, I have my understanding of justice, I have my beliefs, and what I do is for a greater good, and it's not a decision for myself, it's a decision for others. And a good Wonder Woman story then takes the fact that Diana is so convicted to the cause and so ready to make those decisions. You know, she already knows what she has to do. You know, and it is in this certainty that the question becomes, what are the consequences of that? How does a character with such certainty in what she does function in a world that is in fluctuation, where her actions aren't necessarily going to be received well? Which is something that Ruka in general is constantly asking, because so many characters, you know, Veronica Cale, all her villains, react so poorly to the fact that Diana exists. And Eyes of the Gorgon utilizes these questions and tells like this really compelling and heartbreaking story. Diana survives the battle, but the victory is ultimately very hollow. You know, Medusa was this clear and present threat, but she wasn't even the worst one to begin with. You know, she's a monster and needed to be stopped, but she isn't using other things to ascend to power. She isn't trying to destroy her sisters or you know, like everyone else is. Medusa just like, in the end, Medusa's also a pawn to like this larger goal, between this larger feud between Zeus and Athena. You know, and it isn't until the end of this story that we see how much weight Diana is carrying on her shoulders, because she's so aware of that. She's always just going to be this tool. She's beholden to her god's whims. But she's continuing to fight and to continue to seek the truth within that reality. So, you know, and of course I have the benefit of having read all of Ruka's run, so I feel like, you know, you kind of see like the larger picture of Diana's journey in this story. You know, Eyes of the Gorgon tells us that even our greatest heroes can't stop unintended consequences. She wasn't able to save Martin's life, and she even pleads to get him back, and Athena is like, I'll offer you a boon for all your help. And she's like, you know what I want, but you can't grant it, so I want nothing from you. And it's in those kind of quiet moments that are very powerful that makes me wonder why they haven't tried to adapt this as a animated movie. Of course, DC would probably mess it up somehow, and you have to basically take the pages themselves and animate them. Like, you can't change it. And really, going back to, you know, how you can't stop unintended consequences, it's about the steps the heroes take after a tragedy that define them. You know, it's a compelling and dark look at the nature of gods and men, because really Diana's in the middle of like men who are evil and gods who are just don't care and are evil, and she's acting within this world, you know, and it leaves you wanting to know how Diana moves forward. And ultimately, if this makes you want to keep reading Wonder Woman, that to me is a success. You know, so if I haven't made my case yet, which I hope I have, Eyes of the Gorgon is a must read. It's like, if you see like a top 10 Wonder Woman stories list and Eyes of the Gorgon isn't on there, like that's not a real list. Like this should be on everyone's top 10 list of Wonder Woman stories. Everyone's top 10 of comic book stories, but again, that gets a little more subjective. It's a satisfying story. You know, and it's even better when you read all of Ruka's run. It's satisfying in the sense that like that it's not cut and dry, that there's no happy endings, there's not really even a conclusion, there's just a continuations, and because of this, you want to keep reading, you want to keep going, you want to figure out how all this will tie up in the end. So, and again, I always go back to Empire Strikes Back, because like, you know, that wasn't the end for Luke's story. It was like this very dark chapter, and it's like, how is he going to move forward from this? And that's what Eyes of the Gorgon is. It's the Empire Strikes Back of Wonder Woman stories, if I really had to define it. And then it has Medusa. Like, that makes it the best story, hands down. And ultimately, you won't be disappointed if you read this. And so I hope, you know, that's pretty much all I wanted to say on the story, all I wanted to discuss. You know, discuss the lore and the Greek mythology, I think is a lot more fun, and a lot more interesting than just me talking about the same points. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I know I'm a speed demon with these things. But of course, before I forget, let me just go over my sources really quick. When I release the written summary of the show, I'll include all the links. I did a bunch of I used Wikipedia in the sense that I use, like, you know, they include sources to kind of find out more about it, and I used a lot of different kind of school edu, like from what was it? I forget. The links are there, but I looked at these different links to kind of craft the mythology portion of the show, and then of course I used this version of Eyes of the Gorgon. There is a new not freshly printed, but there's a new collection of Ruka's stories that is it's really worth it. All of his stuff is good, but the way it's collected in this new version is a lot better and it fits more with the flow of the story than I think my trade does. But it's worth it. You're getting, especially with the first trade, you're getting Hikatea, which is probably something I'll talk about at some point. And you're getting like the first arc, and then I think second arc is everything else, like Eyes of the Gorgon all the way through, you know, Wonder Woman snapping Maxwell Lord's neck. So it's definitely worth it. But really it was the few websites I visited to do the Greek mythology stuff and all of Eyes of the Gorgon. That was really all I needed to understand and break down the story. So yeah, that concludes the episode. Thank you, Queen Lamabot. But yeah, before I kind of conclude, I know it's been a little quiet this episode, so no questions. But if anyone has any questions now about the episode, about Eyes of the Gorgon, about any Wonder Woman thing, or anything in general, feel free to ask it. As we're closing, I do want to mention that next Saturday, I will be participating in Extra Life. I'll be streaming on Wii Games, my Discord communities, Twitch, and we'll be raising money for children's hospitals. There's links in the panels below for Extra Life. You know, anything you can do to support the cause, support, you know, all the proceeds go to, for me specifically, it's going to Texas Children's Hospital, but hundreds of people around the world, and you know, especially in the United States, are raising money for children's hospitals everywhere. So it's a very good cause. I will be doing a 24-hour stream with my community, so that will be fun. But yeah, spread the word, donate if you can. it's fun. Well, if you donate any dollar amount, you do get put into a drawing for some game related items, some Overwatch loot boxes, and even a Steam card. So yeah, good causes, fun things coming up. The next episode of Themysciran Agenda will be November 29th. And again, I'll have a poll to vote on the subject. Part of me is kind of hoping it's Mod Era. I've put that on the poll every single time and it doesn't win, but it will eventually by process of elimination. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you, Andrew, for keeping me company. No, well, okay, listen, you gotta give me leeway here. You gotta vote for Mod Era at some point. You gotta vote at least once. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate all the support. If you have any suggestions for me, you can catch me on Twitter. And over the weekend, I will upload this episode to YouTube so you guys can catch up and rewind me gushing about Medusa, whatever. But yeah, I will be playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which Medusa's in that one too. Yeah, but I'll be playing that Sunday. Or maybe I'll be playing Destiny, but I think I'll be playing Odyssey because I can't stop playing that one. But yeah, thank you guys, and I will see you next stream.